I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Golic and Wingo with you on a Friday morning as we get set for the best weekend of the NFL post and regular season. Divisional playoffs Saturday and Sunday. Glad you're with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic. Falcons head coach Dan Quinn will join us in just a few minutes, and it'll be interesting to talk to him because he's sort of done a great job, Mike, of remaking what he had in Seattle on that Legion of Boom defense into the Atlanta defense and the way they fly to the football.
You know, I'm looking at that, plus that division. That division had the most wins this year, 3 playoff teams.
From the NFC South.
New Orleans, 11, Carolina, 11, Atlanta, 10. So they had 32 wins between them. The closest I'm seeing, I believe, is actually the NFC North with Minnesota with the 13 wins, Detroit with 9, 22, and Green Bay at 7, that's 29. So they were 3 away, but they're the only division over 30 wins with 32. So really looks good. The offense, and I'm interested to get Dan's answer to this. The team is averaging 11 points less. This offense has not been that offense we've seen last year. We see a lot of the same pieces. I know they've been nicked up a little bit, but you changed the offensive coordinator, so you wonder where that difference is. The bottom line is, they're in the playoffs.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter what your record is now or what you're doing, you're in, so you have a chance to win this thing. This one, though, they're going against the top seed on the road. But as you've mentioned it, since the playoffs were set, the Eagles, listen, they just don't feel like a number 1 seed not having Carson Wentz. And I get the way the players are reacting to it.
And they should.
Those players are ticked off about it, though. Don't think they're getting respect. Say our team is more than Carson Wentz, even though Carson Wentz has basically had been the MVP this year. They have a lot of excellent players on that team, and they've been playing well on both sides of the ball. So I get why they would take it personally and say, and really have that chip on your shoulder. And man, it's great for them because you're always looking for something that can help spur you on a little bit.
Yeah, and listen, if they're going to win that game against the Falcons, that defense, that special teams, and that running game needs to ball out. And we'll see if they can do that, and we'll see if they take it personally and play it out on the field. But let's start now with something we like to call What's Trending. This is important. I don't know how important it is, but it's certainly something that people are talking about now. Tyronn Lue, LeBron James addressing the Cavaliers' second straight blowout loss, 133-99 at Toronto. When he was asked if he was concerned by the Cavs' recent play, Lue said some very interesting things. We got to play better, blah, blah. And then he said, and if guys have agendas, we've got to get rid of those agendas and play the right way.
Yeah, LeBron James said, I would hope people don't have agendas. I don't have them. I just want to win. So he threw that out there, didn't really explain about it. They're bad defensively. They were, as I said, they were bad defensively last year. On the 8-game stretch starting Christmas Day last year, they were 6-2. And then after that, they were 2-6. Now, this time around, they started on Christmas, they're 2-6.
Right.
So, and last year, LeBron was you knew what he was doing when he was talking to the media and saying we need a playmaker. He was complaining about that. Now they have issues defensively, which they've had before. So I don't know where that goes. You wonder, does it catch up enough to where they don't get to where they want to be, and that's the finals playing for the championship. But they've done it, and they've done it playing poor defense. But, man, now their offense, though, is slipping. Their offense, I think, is ranked 21st. So you can't make up for bad defense with not good offense.
Correct.
It doesn't work very well.
You know what the situation is for bad defense is mediocre offense.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not the solution.
Not going to do it. It's like my time in the NFL. I wasn't very strong, but I made up for it by being slow.
There you go. You know? and then you parlay that into a 9-year career.
9-year career.
That's
I was able
beautiful.
To pull it out. They keep parlaying it into a trip to the NBA championship, though. So
7 straight seasons.
It keeps ending up well, winning some, losing some. I get it, but you're there. So we'll see. I'm not abandoning ship at this point.
I'm not either, but let's be clear. Tyronn Lue wouldn't say, hey, and if guys have agendas, we've got to get rid of those agendas and play the right way, unless he thought there were certain agendas that were
exactly
getting.
Right.
That's not a matzo ball you just throw out there.
Right.
So that's something he did with intent. Also, The NFL is looking into whether the Raiders violated the Rooney Rule by hiring John Gruden. And the reason this is an issue, because the Fritz Pollard Lions at first said they had no problems with him being hired. Right. But then Mark Davis at the introductory press conference on Tuesday basically said they had an agreement with Gruden in place before they even fired Jack Del Rio. Yeah, and then they interviewed their tight end coach Bobby Johnson and the offensive coordinator for USC, T. Martin. So listen, this rule, while we know what the intent is, I think is one of the most skirted rules there is, where we know who we want. We're zeroing in on who we want. Oh, yeah, we have to do this, by the way. And that side of it is people will say, well, is it good for a guy like Bobby Johnson and T. Martin to go through the interview process, that even though they're not going to be the coach, maybe word will spread from the Raiders that said, hey, these guys interviewed very well. But that's not the intent of the rule. You know, the intent of that, we know what the intent of this rule is, and it's about as gray an area as can be. I don't know what the answer is, though. I don't know what the answer more is, because I don't know if teams have to disclose who they're interviewing all the time. So it has to lead to an investigation. Hey, did you interview a minority for this? And wait a minute, you've been talking about this coach for that. You're going to hire this coach. Well, did you go through the process? I don't know the answer to this. It's a gray area. We chastise teams for not following it, but what happens? Does anything ever happen to them? I think there was a $200,000 fine levied against Matt Millen when he was the GM of the Lions for hiring Steve Mariucci, and that was about it. We had Bill Polian on NFL Live yesterday, and he believes there will be discipline here. But to your point, I don't know what to. It makes all the sense in the world for the Raiders to want to hire John Gruden. Yes, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. Now you can argue whether or not he should have gotten $10 million or $100 million. Exactly right. But that's not the issue. The issue is, was he an attractive hire for the Raiders? For a variety of reasons, the answer is absolutely yes. So I understand why that would be an easy, seamless fit. But I don't know where else to go and how we delineate this. I don't either, because what if one of the teams looking for a coach, all of a sudden Bill Belichick and Nick Saban were available? Yeah. They would say, we're hiring that guy. Correct. Well, wait a minute. You're supposed to go through a process here when everybody knows they want to hire someone like that. And that's happened at other places, not with those big names all the time, but teams zero in on somebody and then they're like, oh yeah, we have to go through this process first. So while I understand the intent of the rule, do we really think it's working? Do we think it's a positive direction? I have talked to a lot of folks who have gone through the interview process, and Terrell Austin, who has been a great defensive coordinator for a lot of years, has been through this a bunch. Yes, he has. And a lot of players, and they feel like they can tell sometimes when they're in the interview whether or not it's just hey, we're checking a box. We're checking a box, right? Or it's an actual interview. But every time you go through that process, I believe you learn something. I get and you put yourself out there. I get it, but that's not the intent of the rule. Not. No, it's not. So that's a byproduct of this rule that maybe someone can benefit from, but that's not the intent of this rule. Again, we'll see how this goes out. Bill Polian, who was helped craft that rule, was part of that rule when it came in with Dan Rooney, the late great owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, believes there will be some NFL discipline going forward. That's for another day. But meanwhile, we have a huge weekend at the NFL coming up, including the Atlanta Falcons as a favorite on the road against the number 1 seed in Philadelphia, the Eagles. We're delighted to be joined now by Dan Quinn, the Falcons head coach, a former Super Bowl winning coach with the Seahawks, and of course took Atlanta to the Super Bowl a year ago. Dan, thanks for being with us here this morning. We appreciate it. And as a defensive guy, I'm sure you have to appreciate the way that side of the ball has gelled for you guys down the stretch. It's really been one of the biggest reasons why you guys made it back into the playoffs.
Hey, Trey. Hey, Mike. It's good to be on with you. And we're pumped for this opportunity this weekend. And you're right. Our defense, some people might think it's the last couple of weeks, but they've definitely made strides through the season. And these guys have been battle-tested and certainly seen their fair share of good quarterbacks and battling for it. So, Mike, you'd like to be a part of this group. Their toughness, their attitude, their connection together, it's really strong. Seem to be too good of athletes, though, for me to fit in there. I was about to say, we just said he was old and slow. Hey, Dan, I know how you draft. Everybody loves the nose tackle, Mike. Everybody loves that. That's true. That is different. I guess I wouldn't have to have that 4.6, 4.5 speed you like out of some of your guys. But it is interesting, Dan. I mean, you mentioned the last couple of weeks. I look back the last 6 weeks of the season when you guys the last 5 games of the regular season as well as the playoff game. You played the Rams, highest scoring offense in the NFL. You played the Saints twice, a playoff team with a lot of offensive weapons. You played the Panthers, also a playoff team. You played the Vikings, a playoff team, as well as the Bucks. And in that 6-game stretch, this defense just gave up an average of 16.3 points per game. How has this defense been able to sort of turn it up as the season got late and into the playoffs? Anytime you keep getting like time and extension together, that helps. It's really the communication, Trey, right in the middle of it all. Deion Jones and that alert, when the best defense that I've been a part of, you hear it at practice, you hear it right in the games. The communication that takes up and down the line of scrimmage, and that's what you see from our guys. I thought our tackling has improved over the last few months. We've worked hard at that. We haven't had the turnover margin that we've liked, but that part over the last few weeks has come together as well. So this group, they're tight, they're connected, and they're really putting in the work so they can play at their best.
Dan Quinn, head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, joining us again. He was the D coordinator in 2013 for the Seahawks when they won the Super Bowl. I saw on that defensive side of the ball. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball. Here's an offense that last year you took into the Super Bowl as the highest scoring offense at 33 points a game. This year, 15th at 22 points. While you're in the playoffs and where you want to be, and when you're in the playoffs, you have a chance all the time. What to you has been a lot of people throwing out different reasons for why they think offensive scoring is down in Atlanta. What are your reasons?
I guess a couple of things come to mind, Mike. First, one, as the defensive side has improved, they're ready. They knew last year we mostly relied, from an offensive standpoint in a lot of regard. This year, however it takes to win this game, this matchup, this fight, whatever that week calls, whether it's on offense to outscore a team, we've had to score a lot at Seattle to win on a Monday night, or to win a close game as a defensive score where it keeps it down low, or even on the team side of it with Matt Bryant to know we can really rely on him in those moments. Offensively, we're still getting a number of explosive plays, and the team has done a good job on third down. Early on, Mike, we really struggled in our turnover margin, and as you know, that can be a real factor. That drive ended without points on that one. So over the last few weeks, that part's been better for sure for us. And I like calling it a turnover margin because it's not just the offense, it's the defense creating them as well. But as we've been, over the last few weeks, from a whole team standpoint, that connection's really been strong. Offensively, we know we have, playmakers at a number of different spots. It's good to have both our running backs healthy and the receiving, crew back for it. So we're ready to go.
Dan Quinn with us, the Falcons head coach, as they get set to go up to Philadelphia and take on the Eagles. And Dan, one of the things that I loved about the way you guys finished off the L.A. Rams in that game last week was the commitment to the running game. I mean, you only averaged about 3.2 yards a carry. Now, granted, some of that was Matt Ryan, only 5 yards on 6 carries. I don't know what was going on there. But there were 39 attempts. And in a game that was pretty close down the stretch, the fact that you guys stuck to the running game and realized that's the way to grind this out. How much of that has sort of been an involvement in this offense that we've seen going forward from really what happened in the Super Bowl a year ago to now?
We had a real sense because of their front, it was going to be a line of scrimmage day. And it's going to be the same this week. Both teams that like to run it, both teams are effective versus the run. So we made sure that part of our identity, and Mike can relate to this, when you have that kind of balance and you can run the ball and it kind of adds to that toughness of your team, it makes a big difference when the run game's going now, the play action's there, all that goes in concert together. So for us, having that balance, Trey, that's a real factor. We had some long extended drives, and sometimes keep leaning on them in the run game, and you keep owning that time of possession. That's a good formula.
I'll tell you who love it the most is the old lineman. A, they'd rather run block than pass block, and B, it helps play action so much more. No doubt about that. Dan, I'm wondering your coaching kind of strategy or philosophy, even when you were a coordinator to now a head coach, like the coordinating days, if you were going up against a team that had a star on offense and that guy was going to be out. How you talked about that with your team. In this case, you're going up against a team that arguably the MVP of the league, and Carson Wentz is not going to be in the game. And players are players. Listen, sometimes they may exhale a little bit and say, okay, that guy's not on the field. How do you approach that with them?
Yeah, well, number one, we're definitely bummed for Wentz. I thought, Mike, he threw a hell of a year. You never like to see guys miss their postseason ops. But after watching him play, I'm sure he'll have plenty of postseason games in his future. Philadelphia is fortunate. They've got an accomplished vet, who's playing at the backup quarterback. Not everybody has that. And so that gives the team confidence because they know he can get the job done. He's done that before. So when you're playing against a veteran who comes in as a backup, I think that's a different, mindset to go, knowing that, hey, this man can get the job done. He's done it before. So you almost get that instant respect and credibility. He's got plenty of experience for them in the system, both at Kansas City and there at Philly. So And then when you look at their offense and you go through the whole season, you recognize they got a number of playmakers. It's at tight end, at wide receiver, at running back. So you just kind of get right back into the prep, Mike. You get right back into, all the things they want to do and how do they feature the guys. So it really just comes down to, our prep and going for it. But they're fortunate that they've got a backup quarterback as experienced as they do in Foles.
Dan Quinn with us, the Falcons head coach. And again, we're in uncharted territory here, Dan, with this game this weekend. This is the first time since playoff games were awarded by the better record going back to 1975 that the home team or the number one seed is an underdog in their first ever playoff game. And it sure seems like that's something that a lot of the Eagles players are talking about as a motivational chip for them. As the head coach, how are you trying to sort of combat that, knowing that that's going to be something that is a really big block on their shoulder going into this game?
Yeah, and I'll put it back, right for us, and Mike can relate, as a former player, inside the walls, man, you lock the doors, you get back in the lab, and you try to, work your butt off to get your preparation right. And on our team, that's like our responsibility to one another, the films, the meetings, the practice time. So you put that work in, Trey, so you get to that spot mentally where you can't wait. And as ball players, we don't really get caught up in rankings or seedings or favorites. You just try to get your mind exactly right for all the things you need to do to go play really well. So for us, it went right back to it, man. Lock the doors, go back to the lab and get our preparation right. We don't really get caught up even into the ranking stuff, offensively, defense. Not something we talk about with the team much, with the exception of turnover margin. That's one that we do. So for us, right back to it, man. We threw a hell of a week in terms of our preparation, and that's really where our focus lies.
As far as through the year, and I don't know the answer to this because I never got to a Super Bowl, to whether to win one or to lose one. How does that work through the year? Is it kind of in the locker room a rallying cry of let's remember that to get there again to go for the win? Is it completely put aside and say it's a new year? How has that been working for the Atlanta Falcons?
I think early in the year, Mike, it was still a story. You kind of go through the off season, you're getting started, and as a coach, you're ready to see your team get tested because you want to find out, have you learned from some of the scars that you had, through a loss. But then as the season goes on, it really kind of turns and it shifts just into this team. And so this 2017 team, all the stuff they stand for as a group. So it's not a rallying cry anymore. It's just like how hard they can fight just for this game. And that's really where our focus lies. We try not to look too far back or down the line, anything that would be past this. It's just like the phrase we use, the only fight that matters is the one you're in. So we just get locked in for this moment, this game. And I think as the season goes on, the team that you're on, that connection really grows, and that's kind of where we're at.
Well, it's been a lot of fun to watch this Falcons team sort of go through the ebbs and flows of the season and the way they've sort of rallied at the end and found that identity that I know you as a defensive head coach must love. The sure tackling that we certainly saw Poole and all those guys and Keanu O'Neal have in that secondary against the high-flying Rams offense on Saturday. Hey, we appreciate the time, Dan. Thanks for being with us, and best of luck this Saturday in Philadelphia.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right, you got Dan Quinn with us, and it's really fun to see a head coach sort of put his imprint on a team because Dan obviously came from Seattle and the Legion of Boom, and he has done a great job of recreating that speed to the ball defense in Atlanta that he had.
Listen, they had the offense, so he got there and created that defense, and you know what he wants. He wants athletes, he wants speed, and maybe the big nose tackle occasionally.
Well, that's you. Come on. See, you got to stop losing weight.
But he wants those fast guys, and that's the way he wants to play, and that's Philadelphia's a job is to slow them down. As I said, get them playing on their heels, not on their toes. But from that defensive side for Atlanta, and listen, the biggest difference of Foles and Wentz's ability to create. When you get the rush, you can get out of the pocket and create. Foles can't do that as well for a defensive line and a pass rush that really can get pressure on the quarterback. Foles is going to have to stand in there, and he's certainly big enough to do it and just whip that ball down the field. I love that saying. The only fight to concern yourself with is the one you're in. Yeah. I do like that, and not letting. And that is one of the keys that a head coach needs to do is just keep all the ancillary things out. Right. Keep the noise out. As you said, lock the doors, get back to the lab, get the formula going the right way, and get to work.
Well, the interesting thing, again, that makes this game so historically significant, it's the first time since they've awarded playoff games based on the better record back to 1975 that a team that has the number 1 seed or playing their first playoff game would be an underdog. And just so people, if they might not remember or they didn't even know, before 75, it was a predetermined rotation.
Yeah.
Like before the season began, this was going to be who had the home field and all this kind of stuff. And the craziest example of that, 1972, the Miami Dolphins unbeaten season, 17-0. That year, the AFC Championship game was in Pittsburgh. It was in Pittsburgh, even though they didn't lose a game.
Wow, I didn't know.
The entire
Wow,
time. Now they went up to Pittsburgh and won 16-0.
Yes, they did, obviously.
But it's so foreign to our way of thinking
that
now.
Really is.
You win, you stay at home. Didn't used to be that way.
How were they so dumb back then?
What were they thinking?
What were they thinking?
Things are so much better now.
So much.
It's just so foreign, but that's just one of those crazy things in the NFL that's changed. All right, coming up, we'll talk to one of the anchors of one of the best defenses in the NFL and what he has to say about his much maligned quarterback. We'll get to that. All right, as we continue on Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. That little in bump, we call it there, was the sound of Malik Jackson scoring a touchdown for the Denver Broncos on the strip sack Von Miller in Super Bowl 50. Malik Jackson of the Jacksonville Jaguars will be joining us in just a little bit. But a lot of people forget that was the only touchdown in that game up until the final 3 minutes.
Right.
So, I mean, the offense in that game for Denver Broncos was a Von Miller, Malik Jackson combined touchdown and a bunch of field goals up until that fumble late where they were able to score with C.J. Anderson.
And now what they have put together in Jacksonville, kudos, there's one thing between drafting and free agency. I mean, you can do it if you have the money to do it, but then you got to get it right.
Right.
Too many teams, either through free agency or drafting, don't get the right people. They've hit them both.
Yeah.
They've hit home runs with free agents and draft choices, and now it's showing.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, we'd like to welcome in Malik Jackson, defensive tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 5th-round pick out of Tennessee, Super Bowl champ with the Broncos, and hoping to get there again with this Jaguars defense. Malik, thanks for being with us. That Denver Broncos defense that you guys won Super Bowl 50 with was dominant on every level. As you see this defense in Jacksonville now with the addition of Calais Campbell and how Bouye and Ramsey are playing, and you've got Fowler and Miles Jack, how similar do you see this group to the team that you won it all with a couple years ago?
First, what's up, guys? Always good to talk to you guys.
Thanks,
it's a special team. That 2015 team, we were special. We were able to take that team to the Super Bowl and win it, And we had guys like Brandon Marshall, Dan Trevathan, Chris Harris, Aqib Talib, T.J. Ward in the back end. Me, myself, and Derek Wolfe. Not only speak about Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, but I think the only difference is that we have just different guys with the same athletic ability, same I think bright future. We're just younger. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that God is still developing. Miles Jack is on his second year, doing great things. Yannick Ngakoue is on his second year. Dante Fowler's going on his third or fourth year. So it's like things like that where guys are young, and that's the only difference. But we still have a attention to detail to where we can all work. You know what I'm saying? That like you guys said, the front office has done a great job of bringing guys in here, old and young, and we're mixed well in each room to where we have a Calais, we have a Barry Church, we have a Paul Puslesny in every room to where they just share all the knowledge they have, and it helps the youth. So it's awesome to have.
It's so much fun to watch because defenses I was on in Philadelphia when you were a really young kid, had it like you guys had it at every level from D-line to linebackers to secondary as well. And I'm wondering, and it was so much fun at practice and in the games because you had so many different people that could make plays. Like when I was with that line, it was Reggie White and Clyde Simmons and Jerome Brown. They would have, that competition amongst them who would get the most sacks. I would be the one keeping score because I wasn't really involved, getting the sacks there. How about you guys? Do you guys have that friendly competition amongst that defense on who's going to make that play?
Oh, that's on every level, between AJ and Jalen in the back end, they feel like if one gets picked, the other one has to get a pick. And I think that's what makes all of us better. We have that healthy competition to where, we want to see each other do great, but we also want to make sure we're the one shining the brightest. You know what I'm saying? And I think that makes everybody better around you because it allows you to work your hardest and truly be who you are, but work your hardest and make plays, and that makes everybody else around you because they're going to want to do the same thing if they're worth their salt as a competitor. You know what I'm saying? So, look, Calais, we have a thing in our D-line room. You know, it was King of the Hill. You know, and Calais won that this year with the sacks. You know, and we all saw it every day. We were chasing it. You know what I'm saying? As far as the season will go, game in and game out. And it was one of those things that was a healthy competition that we needed. You know, I think it allowed Yannick Ngakoue to get the sacks he had. You know, it definitely boosted me, and it boosted Dante on that third down team to really go after this quarterback, because when you physically see something, somebody doing something, you know, you should want to do it too, because it's what we do.
Well, it's certainly what you guys have done all year long. Malik Jackson, Jacksonville Jaguars defensive lineman, with us on Golic and Wingo. And, you know, I keep going back to the Broncos team because I think the comparisons are really similar to what we're seeing in Jacksonville. Not only dominant defenses, Malik, but also offenses that at times have struggled this year. I mean, yes, that was Peyton Manning in Denver in 2015, but that was not Peyton Manning, if you know what I mean. That was a different version. Yeah. And you know, it's funny, as we were getting ready to do this interview, I went back and looked at that clip of Peyton running for that 3rd and 10 in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots. And there's the reaction of you on the bench like, I can't believe he actually did that and got the first down so we could get a rest. But that's some of the things that is facing this Jacksonville offense as well. Obviously, Blake has had good games at quarterback, but he struggled the last 2 weeks of the regular season and struggled in the postseason in that win over Buffalo, although he ran for some critical first downs. As a defensive player, how do you deal with the offensive side when it's not as productive as your side of the ball?
We just go out there and do what we do. You know, as a defense, you can't really flinch if the offense isn't being productive that day, or if they're getting 3 and outs. You know, it's up to us to go make our adjustments quickly and then go back out there and get a 3 and out. So that's how we see it. We really don't cry about it. You know, we're not like, oh my God, what are they doing? You know, we know that they got some things they're going to fix, and they're going to get it going. And when they do, it's going to be a beautiful thing. So we just go out there and do our job and make sure that, like last week, if our team scores 10 points, it's enough. So, you know, we just do our job.
Talking to Malik Jackson from the Jacksonville Jaguars, 5th-round pick out of Tennessee in 2012. Again, as we talked about, Super Bowl champ with the Broncos in 15, first-time Pro Bowler this year. Congrats to you on that. You go back, you guys faced Pittsburgh, beat them 30-9. What's the biggest difference in your mind of watching any tape of that game on what the Steelers are now compared to then?
I mean, in that game, you know, they're the same guys. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that they got better. You know, of course, that was early in the season, but they worked themselves to become the 3 Pro Bowlers and the 1 All-Pro they have. You know what I'm saying? So as far as that O-line, I think that they've done tremendous things. They've gotten better in the season, just like we got better in the season. You know, so it should be interesting to see from that performance how both teams have gotten better, to see where we can go and what we can do now. You know, I think watching the film, you know, I forgot that it was a pretty much tied game going into halftime. You know what I'm saying? So I think if we can just continue the dominance that we had in the second half and come into this game with that mindset and that this mindset, I think we'll be okay. So we've been practicing. You know, guys are getting healthy, and I'm just excited for this game because it's a big game for the Jags. You know, we can definitely surprise some people, and I think we are. So we'll see.
Yeah, you're right. In that game, halftime, you guys were winning 7-6. You outscored them 23-3 in the second half.
Absolutely.
And that was defense. And stuff, too, not even our offense.
2 pick sixes in that game.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what? Malik Jackson with us, Jacksonville Jaguars stellar defensive lineman. And by the way, they're nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year for all he does in the Jacksonville community. Congratulations to that. We know you've done that for a long time, and it's great to see that side of you as a person being rewarded as well. But I wanted to get into one thing that I thought was really interesting when you look at your decision. You had one of the greatest tweets of all time, by the way, when you signed that deal with Jacksonville as a 5th-round pick. All you put out was, what a time to be alive.
Absolutely.
And it certainly worked out for you.
Timing is everything.
What do they always say? You want to get in on something early as opposed to late. You were one of the first guys that decided, hey, I think things can change in Jacksonville. Obviously, the money is always going to be a big part of any decision, but you could have you had a lot of options after that Super Bowl season you had with the Denver Broncos. What made you believe in what they were doing in Jacksonville?
I mean, when I was able to sit down with Mr. Caldwell at the time when he was there, and he just told me his dream, and I just believed what he had to say, and I was able to sit down with Coach Wash, the defense coordinator, and talk to him and see my role and how I would fit. And I just thought I can get better and rise with him, and be to where I thought I could be in my career, which is now I'm an all-pro in my second year in this defense. So it's one of the things that, like you said, I saw what we can do. I saw the way we were going, and I saw that I can be a big help on this D-line, because they already had a lot of key pieces, like in Avery Jones, and they had just got Yannick and Ngakwe, and they had Dante Fowler. So it's one of those things that I knew I can come in here and just be a guy that's been to the Super Bowl, literally just been to the Super Bowl, and I can bring in a knowledge to where to show these guys where we can go and how we can do it and just change the culture of Jacksonville. So, it's just been awesome to be a part of, man, and so we can keep going.
All right, that's Malik Jackson with the Jacksonville Jaguars heading up to the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend to take them on, see if they can beat them twice in 1 year. And again, we should point out he is the Jacksonville Jaguars nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. His own foundation, Malik's Gifts, supports military, at-risk youth and their families, as well as pet adoption. So he's dominating on the field. Yep. He's dominating off the field as well. Malik, thanks for being with us. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks, Malik.
Man, appreciate you guys. Go Jags.
You got it, man. Malik Jackson with us. And he was the first guy.
He was.
He was the first one to take that chance.
And as you said, money can talk as well. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No
but
question.
You're right. He had multiple teams looking at him.
He could have gone anywhere.
But so really give Jacksonville I remember one time we were talking about in Washington. The one thing as a Washington Redskins fan you couldn't deny was Dan Snyder didn't mind signing checks.
Correct.
Because they brought in so many high-priced free agents, but they never became Pro Bowler. They were Pro Bowlers elsewhere and never were hit Pro Bowling status in Washington. So they were paying money to guys that weren't producing.
Right.
So they were making some wrong selections. Or they seemed right at the time, but they didn't pan out. These are panning out.
Yeah.
I mean, from free agent picks to as we mentioned, to the draft picks, it is hitting. And as Malik mentioned, they're young. So this window is open, that's why it brings up the question. And it's not for Malik to answer. He's in that locker room, is what's going to happen at that quarterback position. But right now they are dominant. And Malik makes his first Pro Bowl, of which I'm sure he wants no part of playing in.
Yeah.
Because that means they'll be getting ready for the Super Bowl.
Correct.
If he's not playing in the Super Bowl, which again is a week before, the Pro Bowl is a week before the Super Bowl. But I love watching that defense. It is reminiscent of when I was in Philly because we were dominant on the D-line, the linebackers, and the secondary, just like they are.
There's no weakness on that defense.
No weakness at all. They're really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, you really have to give a lot of credit to General Manager David Caldwell there, who we alluded to when he said he sat down with Mr. Caldwell. Not only have they picked the right free agents in Calais Campbell, and Malik Jackson, they have drafted so well. Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Fournette,
Miles Jack,
Dante Fowler coming back from obviously the ACL. Right. They have picked the right players in the draft. They've picked the right players through free agency. Caldwell, by the way, a protege of our Bill Polian. That's who we learned under. So good job by General Manager David Caldwell of putting together that foundation. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Anyone that's listened to this show or your previous incarnation of this show, Mike, knows you love the food.
Yes, I do.
Despite the fact that you're now heroin chic and are going to be a runway model.
I still eat plenty.
You love the food, and something happened recently that just tugged at the strings of your heart.
It's unbelievable.
And your stomach.
Justin Falk of the Carolina Hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
He scored a power play goal at 10:36 in the second period to tie the game for the Hurricanes, making it 3-3 against Tampa Bay.
And that's significant. Why?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why. First off, I don't even know who won the game, and I don't care. Okay? Because his goal kicked off the NHL's first fat trick. Not hat trick, but fat trick. So first, he scored a goal.
Yep.
And that kicked off this. Anytime Falk scores, select Moe's locations, hand out a free side of queso the next day.
Okay.
So that got triggered.
Free queso.
Free queso.
All right, that's number one.
Now, it tied the game 3-3. So they scored 3 goals.
Right.
Papa John's offers half-price pizzas, online only, on days after the Canes score at least 3 goals.
Okay, so we got free queso and a half-price pie the day after the game.
Because they scored 3 goals and because Falk scored.
Yep.
Also, when the Canes score on a power play goal, Falk's goal was a power play goal. Bojangles gives free Bowberry biscuits to customers who say, I'm a Caniac, and it's bow time. I love that. So Falk scored, kicked off the Moe's deal.
Free queso.
free queso.
Yeah.
He scored the third goal, which gives him Papa John's half-price pizzas.
So you put the queso on the half-price pizza and give it extra cheese.
There you go. Right. And you get some Bo-Berry biscuits because they scored a power play goal.
But you have to say, I'm a Caniac. And
it's bow time.
It's bow time.
Now, so Justin Falk's one goal turned out to be a fat trick. I think that is just awesome.
Here's the question. If you're eating the half-price pie with the free queso as you walk into Bojangles, can you even say the words, Caniac and bow time, because you have so much food in your mouth?
I think professional eaters like myself
would find a way to get it
done.
Could
do it, yeah.
All right, well, here's the deal then. Let's just say, for anybody that took advantage of this fat trick, the one thing you should not do the next day, check your cholesterol.
No, don't do that.
Wait a while.
We don't worry about that.
Wait a while. Let that settle in.
I love the promotions like that because at basketball games, if you hit to 100 points, that's why a lot of times the game could be not even competitive, and the team gets to 100 points and there's a standing ovation.
Tacos.
People are waving their tickets around, Taco Tuesday. It was in baseball, for a stolen base and such, it would be taco. I mean, I think it's fantastic. This one goal triggered 3 food promotions.
That was the fat trick, as they like to call it. And that got me to thinking about that other one that happened a couple of years ago. I think it was 2016 with Michigan. Ruth's Chris, which, by the way, love me some Ruth's Chris. The sizzling plate, 1800 degrees, butter on top of the steak.
Okay.
The 4th Avenue Ruth's Chris in Ann Arbor had a promotion saying they would discount the patron's total food bill by whatever percentage equaled the Wolverines' margin of victory that Saturday. Well, they went out and beat Michigan 78-0.
Oh my gosh!
Rutgers. Michigan beat Rutgers 78-0, which means that was a 78% discount. However, it capped it at 50.
Oh, okay.
But still, you got a half price off a steak, which is a pretty good deal. And they had to put out this apology. The discount caps at 50%, which was not clear in the initial post. This amazing promotion was launched with a cap of 50%. And by the way, by Sunday afternoon, the restaurant was booked up all the way through Thursday to take advantage.
Had to be packed. How do you leave out that part of it?
Yeah. My bad. We forgot to put this little disclaimer in here.
The 50% cap on this thing.
But having eaten at Ruth's Chris, 50% off
that's great.
I'm running there as fast
Bottom
as
line,
I freaking can.
Place was packed, so it worked, didn't it?
Absolutely worked. You know what else worked? Having a faith in an undrafted wide receiver out of Mankato State for the Minnesota Vikings. That would be Adam Thielen, one of the breakout stars in the NFL. He will join us next to talk about his big season and the big game coming up Sunday as the Saints come to town. Golic and Wingo getting you set for a great football weekend.